Today on Sports Central, we'll be going over a college football game preview and prediction on a big matchup coming up in the Big Ten in Week 13, and this one's going to be between Penn State and Michigan. And honestly, based on the records of both of these teams, it doesn't really look like all that big of a matchup. You got Penn State, of course, who's 0-5 right now, Michigan, who's 2-3. But if you look at it a little bit deeper, this is a huge game for both these teams moving forward because you got Penn State, once again, they're desperate for a win right now. They're 0-5, and this has just been a rough season for them moving forward. And if you're going to want to have a good season in 2021, possibly get some momentum going before next season, you definitely want to get a win here. Meanwhile, for Michigan, Jim Harbaugh is definitely on the hot seat here. And the thing is about Michigan is if they go 2-4 and they lose to an 0-5 team, I think Jim Harbaugh is that much further on the hot seat for Michigan. So this is actually a very important game for both these teams moving forward if you look into it a little bit more, because once again, you got a winless team and a team has definitely got a coach on the hot seat. So it's going to be an important game for both programs moving forward. That is for sure, and we're going to be going over a full game preview and prediction on this one here today. Starting out with your team trends, and of course, Penn State lost to Iowa 21-41. That was back last week, and of course, Iowa's looking like a really good team right now. They had a lot of momentum heading into that matchup against Penn State, but down the stretch, Penn State has just had a lot of bad losses. Like they lost to Nebraska back on November 14th, and of course, Nebraska just got blown out to Illinois. They got blown out to Maryland. They got blown out to Ohio State. And they lost to Indiana at the beginning of the season. But all around, just for Penn State, it's been a rough season. It's been a very rough go at it for the Nittany Lions. And then for Michigan on their side, I mean, they barely beat Rutgers 48-42 last week. So, I mean, Michigan's definitely got some problems within their team as well. I mean, they looked like a really good team in the first week when they beat a ranked Minnesota team 49-24. But ever since then, it's just been a rough go at it for Michigan. They lost to Michigan State, of course, got blown out to Indiana, blown out to Wisconsin, and they almost lost to Rutgers. So, yeah, just been a rough go at it for both these teams. Winning streaks, Penn State is 0-5 with a 5-game losing streak, obviously, and then Michigan has got a 1-game winning streak, and they're 2-3. Games will be on Saturday, November 28th, noon Eastern in Ann Arbor. So Michigan will be your home team here. Spread currently says Michigan by 2.5. Penn State leads the ESPN FPI 53%, and the Vegas prediction is also going with Michigan 37-32. So obviously, it's 2-3 here for Michigan, according to the spread and all of that. So obviously, I mean, it's kind of a weird situation here with having the ESPN FPI disagreeing with the spread. Usually, it's kind of the opposite way, but in the end, I mean, it's still going to be a close matchup, that's for sure. I mean, this one was a very tough one to predict for me, especially. I mean, considering how both teams are currently within their programs, like Penn State is kind of desperate right now, and that's the reason why they get a win. And then Michigan, of course, with having Jim Harbaugh on the hot seat, it's going to be a big game for them too. So it will be a close one. I definitely do expect that. But here's your stat comparison for this one. Penn State's got 24 points per game, 36 points allowed. That is a terrible stat line. They had 279 pass yards a game, 139 rush yards, and then for yards allowed, they had 221 passing and then 138 rushing. As for Michigan, they got 30 points per game, 36 points allowed. They got 278 pass yards a game, 122 rush yards, and then for yards allowed, they got 274 passing and then 163 rushing. So all around for both these teams, I mean, Penn State especially, it's just been, I mean, they've had a lot of offensive problems, that's for sure. I mean, Sean Clifford hasn't started every game for Penn State, but I mean, he's had a pretty underwhelming season. He's had 11 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, just over 1,000 yards through 5 games, so it's been kind of a rough go at it for him. But Joe Milton on the Michigan side, he was someone that I thought would possibly have a breakout season, possibly have a great season for Michigan, but yeah, it didn't really turn out that way. 1,000 yards is what he's had so far too, 4 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. As for the running backs for both these teams, I mean, both teams really aren't as high on rushing right now. I mean, you got Haskins on the Michigan side, who's put up 274 yards on the season. Then you got Ford with Penn State. The thing is about Penn State is, I mean, something that I've noticed in fact is, like Penn State, I mean, if you look over the past few years, they've always had a really good running back under center. I mean, they've always had a great running back. Like we've seen Saquon Barkley go through there, and I could name several others from Penn State who have gone through there as good running backs. The thing is, though, this season for Penn State, they really have not had a very defined running back. Like Sean Clifford, he's thrown a few rush yards on the board, but they've also got Ford, of course. But then again, Ford's only had 200 yards through 5 games. And the thing is for Penn State is this is a heavy rushing team usually, so it's kind of tough to see this team be so unsuccessful as the way they have been. But, I mean, they do have Dodson, who's a pretty good receiver. 520 yards is what he's had, and 6 touchdowns as well. And, of course, Ronnie Bell with Michigan with 350 yards on the season. Some key points for this one. Terrible season for both teams so far. I've already mentioned that. Both teams are definitely way more talented than the records show. That is another thing. I mean, Penn State we've seen them have some great recruiting. I mean, this is a great recruiting class that Penn State has right now. And, I mean, they're 0-5, which is absolutely baffling to me. Like, how they can go from a college football playoff contending season to 0-5. It's just 2020. Like, this year is the only year where that can happen. But, I mean, also, I mean, with COVID and everything, that could also have a factor. I mean, we've seen a lot of crazy things happen this season, which I'm pretty sure is bound to happen from the start. But honestly, this game, yeah, it's going to be very important for both these teams and having major long-term impacts. I mean, Penn State, once again, if you lose out, which the thing is about Penn State is, I mean, they do have Rutgers, I think, in a couple of weeks, either next week or the week after that. So, I mean, there's a good chance to win a game there. But, I mean, if you lose to Michigan here, that throws you at 0-6, and that gives you absolutely no momentum moving forward. And especially if you've only got 1 or 2 wins on this season, or even that, like, yeah, it's going to be a rough go at it this offseason and heading into the 2021 season. Because, I mean, usually what I like to see, or what some teams happen, or how some things work is, I mean, if you have a pretty rough go at it at the end of the season in a previous year, usually that can sometimes lead into the next season. And that's something that I've seen kind of as a trend, like through several teams, especially in the Big Ten. And so for Penn State especially, I mean, if you have only 1 win on this season, that's going to be a rough thing to come off of going into a long off season. So, yeah, for Penn State, though, I mean, this is a big game for them. But also Michigan. I mean, Jim Harbaugh, once again, head coach who's on the hot seat right now. Who knows what's in future for him with Michigan. But in the end, this game is going to be a huge one. And I've got Penn State getting their first win on Saturday against Michigan. I think your halftime score is going to be 17-14. We're going to see the Wolverines lead at the half. But in the final, Penn State's going to win a nail-biter by 1. 28-27 is going to be your final score. Probability is going to be 55% towards Penn State. I mean, as you can see, I'm very this is a tough one to predict. That's all I'm going to say. I mean, this is a very tough one. I mean, you got 2 teams here that I definitely think are going to be really going for this win. Like, this is going to be an important one. But once again, probability 55% towards Penn State. So I'm very careful with this big. I'm not very confident with this one. I definitely think that Penn State's got a lot of talent here. There's no doubt. But I think Penn State is going to get the win in the end. Once again, final score 28-27. But do let me know your thoughts in the comments below on this game. Let me know what team you think is going to win. Let me know your score predictions. All of that down below. I appreciate all your support. And once again, thanks again for watching. Stay tuned for more. I'll see you all later.